and let's start today's practice. We're going to begin on our bellies. Find a comfortable position for your hands. We're going to be doing some back breathing, which takes into account that 60% of the lungs reside in the back of the body. So find that comfortable position for your arms. Bring your head to a position which might need to be turned to the side, or it could be down where you're still able to draw in a lot of breath, but something comfortable. And let's have a big inhale, big exhale. And now as we inhale, let's imagine that air spreading all the way across from shoulder to shoulder, filling air across the upper back, releasing it. And then we're going to think about the mid-back, just above the belly button, inhaling, filling the air, feel mid-back, releasing. And then the low back, down by the hips, see if we can fill air all the way down to there, and release. And now as we breathe, we're going to combine this. Rather than each breath being combining the top and then releasing, let's inhale, filling the top of the back, the mid-back, the low back, and then release. Inhaling, top to bottom, exhaling, feeling that release. Continue to breathe as I talk through today's meditation. We've been talking about Psalm 23 that says, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters." And then it says, "He restores my soul," which sounds really good, doesn't it? But what exactly does that mean? That's something I'd like to explore today. And I love the way Max Lucado in his book, Safe in a Shepherd's Arms, talks about the process of restoring the soul. He says this, he says that the shepherd doesn't reform, he restores. They're two different things. He says it's not camouflage. He said that the master builder, the shepherd, is going to get out that original plan that he had for our world and make everything right, the way that it was supposed to be. Restored energy, restored vigor, restored hope. And David, the author of Psalm 23, needed this kind of restoration. Back when you look at another psalm that he wrote, Psalm 42, he says, "Why are you so downcast, O my soul? Put your faith in God." He knew where to go to find that restoration of the soul, and he experienced deep anguish over his sin in Psalm 42. We know this kind of weariness, don't we? Divorce, illness, loss of job, loss of reputation. Just looking at our life and saying, hey, this is not where I thought I would be right now. It can bring us to this place of despair and weariness. And it's in this weariness that we find the words of Jesus so welcoming, where he says, "Come to me, all ye who are weary and laden, and I will give you rest." And over the ages, people have come. They didn't come for doctrine, they didn't come for religion. They came for restoration, for hope, knowing that Jesus is the anchor that we need in the storm of life. You let God live long enough in a heart, and that heart will change. You can't leave unchanged when God is living in your heart, when you've embraced him as your shepherd. Walls of anger come crashing down. Shaky foundations are suddenly solid again. God changes us. In fact, God could no less live in a heart without changing it than a mother could not wipe her child's tear away. That restoration that we experience from God is a restoration to righteousness and a restoration to hope, and it's a restoration to life itself. He restores our soul. He leads us in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever, fully restored. Now let's shift back into child's pose. Let's kick off our practice, not just with our breathing, but moving right into prayer. Let's do a prayer of adoration to the shepherd, the restorer of our soul, praising him for who he is. And now we're gonna put those knees together if they were separated. I love the wide knee child's pose. We're gonna come into child's pose, then come forward into a modified plank, dropping down to modified crocodile, lifting back to that modified plank, and then shifting back to child's pose. Let's just flow here a little bit. Coming to that modified plank, fingers digging into the mat here, not just the pressure placed to the palms. That's not great for our wrists to do that. When we drop down to that modified crocodile, we go no lower than the elbows, lifting back up, keeping those arms close to the body. One breath, one movement as we begin to warm up, getting a good upper body warm up here. Flowing child's pose, modified plank, modified crocodile. And the next time that we come down, let's come all the way down, bringing our belly to the mat, and then we're gonna flip our hands upside down as we move into cobra. We're gonna lengthen the spine, lengthen the neck, lifting the head, using the power of the back to lift into cobra. The reason that I've got our hands flipped up here is because this is not us pushing off, especially this early in the practice. That's a lot for our spine to get that kind of extension pushing into it. Cobra is actually the strength of the back. We're drawing the shoulder blades back towards our legs. We want to have a lifted neck, but not something that's going to put us in a hyperextension. We want a nice natural curve, really using the strength of the back. And now, anytime that we move within yoga, we do want to initiate that with the core. And this is a great place to practice that. Let's flip those hands back, initiating movement with the core. So we move back into child's pose. And now let's flow again, this time adding that cobra into what we've got going on here. Cobra, using the core to push back to child's pose. Coming back to a modified plank, modified crocodile. Hitting the mat, flipping, just to remind us not to push off, coming into cobra, coming back into child's pose. Now let's come onto all fours. Let's warm up our hands a little bit, the wrists coming forward and back, just gently. Nothing that causes pain. We're just loosening things up and trying to take good care of our wrists. You can take those hands slightly out. Bring them slightly in. Maybe give a little flip, gently. And let's move into some cat-cow. Knees underneath of the hips, hands underneath of the shoulders. We're gonna inhale, drawing the heart forward, lifting the tailbone, extending the neck. Now pause here and notice, are we feeling this elongated? Are we elongating from the tailbone all the way up the spine, all the way to the neck, making that long line? And then let's reverse this, coming into cat. Noticing every part of the spine from the tailbone all the way to the crown of the head. Let's inhale cow and exhale cat as we begin to flow, but we really want to pay attention to what we're doing. This is not hopping onto the elliptical, popping on some headphones and just going for it. When we do exercises like dance, kickboxing, yoga, it's mind-body because we're thinking about what we're doing. We're noticing. What are we feeling? Where are we feeling it? Responding to it. Can we move more deeply into a move, or should we back off a little bit? As we move in cat-cow, notice what's happening with the shoulder blades. Notice what's happening with the tailbone. Notice the space being created between the vertebrae down the back side as we come into cat. And then how we can reverse this in cow. Engaging the neck to get the thyroid and the parathyroid involved here. And we can come back to neutral. Let's take our hands over to the left, drawing that right foot up, framing it, pushing off, inhaling up. Let's take our hands overhead, gaze high, coming into a time for a prayer of thanksgiving. Breathing, thanking God for all the blessings you've experienced this week, Could be family or friends, could be people you don't even know, like the author of the book you're reading or the Amazon delivery guy who brought your package this morning. Returning the back to neutral. Let's come down to forward fold. Inhaling up, and then we're going to reach up with the right, release back down, reach up with the left, release to neutral, forward fold. Soft knees in that forward fold. Reaching up, lateral flexion. Continuing with our spinal warm-up, but we're not only warming the spine here, but we're warming the hip flexors as we combine this with our forward fold, warming the shoulders as we circle up and come down. That lateral flexion of the spine is going to create space down the side. The next time that we come up, let's bring those hands together. Let's bring our feet together, reaching up, lengthening the spine, then drawing ourselves over to the right, taking our gaze to the left, getting a little extra lateral extension here. Breathing and noticing how that inhale and exhale feel down the spine. And let's return back to neutral. Shifting to the other side, leaning to the left, taking our gaze to the right. And we can come back to neutral. Let's take our hands to heart center, stepping out so that we've got our feet back underneath of the hips, sitting the hips back into chair. Lifting as we rotate behind us, hips stay forward, belly button moves behind, followed by the chest and our gaze, continuing with our spinal warm-up, but with rotation. Sinking those hips back with most of the weight at the heels, toes nice and light. You can even lift them if you need a little reminder there to have all the weight at the back of the foot when we sink into chair. Noticing the heat between the hands as we bring those hands to heart center. Initiating this movement at the belly button as we rotate. Noticing within the spine where we feel this. And the next time we come into chair, let's pause here. Taking time for our prayer of confession, searching our hearts. Maybe we need some restoration right now. God offers it. And we can come back to a standing position. Inhaling up, exhaling forward fold. Stepping back with that right foot, lifting into lunge. Returning our hands to the mat, pushing back with that left foot, coming into down dog. Let's pause here in our first down dog. Just alternating, pressing the heels towards the mat while our hips float towards the ceiling, head hanging between the biceps. And we can inhale, bending the knees. Exhale, pressing back. Finding a lengthening down the back of the legs. Head hanging down in an inversion here. And then we can shift forward to plank or modified plank, your choice. Down to crocodile or modified crocodile. Releasing belly down to the mat, taking our hands to the bottom of the rib cage, lifting into up dog. Tucking those toes, coming back to down dog. Let's take that right foot forward, lifting back into lunge, returning our hands to the mat, stepping forward to forward fold. Inhaling up, exhaling chair, circling up, forward fold. Now let's step back with that left foot, lifting into lunge, returning our hands to the mat. We move back into down dog. Plank, crocodile or modified crocodile. Then dropping the belly down, hands down to the bottom of the rib cage, lifting into up dog, pushing back into down dog. Taking our left foot forward, lifting into lunge. Taking our hands down to the mat, stepping forward into forward fold. Inhaling up. Exhaling chair. Inhaling up, exhaling, forward fold. Stepping back with that right foot, lifting lunge, taking our hands back down to the mat, stepping back into down dog, coming forward into plank, down to crocodile or modified crocodile, down all the way, lifting into up dog, pushing back to down dog, right foot comes forward, lifting into lunge, taking our hands back down to the mat, stepping forward with the left, inhaling up, exhaling chair. One more set of our sun salutations. Inhaling up, exhaling, forward fold, stepping back with the left, lifting into lunge. Hands are turned down to the mat, pushing back to down dog. Plank, crocodile or modified crocodile. Coming all the way down, hands to the bottom of the rib cage so that they'll wind up underneath of our shoulders. And lifting into up dog, down dog. Let's take that left foot forward, lifting into lunge, arms overhead. So even though we've got our hands lifted overhead, we want to think about the shoulders coming down. So we don't want to hunch our shoulders up by our ears. So the shoulders are down, the hands are lifted up. We want to feel a good stretch in that hip flexor. We're breathing. We want a good bend in that front knee. We're pointed with the knee towards that second toe, 90-degree angle or less. Your choice. If this bothers the shoulders to have the hands lifted, we can bring them down to heart center. Breathing, using the strength of the legs here. Good antidote to sitting too much. Now we're going to bring that rear leg up, the right leg, drawing it in front of us. And let's open up those arms. Let's give a twist to our wrists. Getting out any crackles and pops for this morning. And then we're going to rotate over that right leg towards the side of the room, challenging our rotation a little bit. Breathing, challenging our balance a little bit. Noticing again how that breath, when we're breathing nice and deep, which we want to be, is going to affect the spine. Now when we're in a rotation, we do want that spine to be nice and straight. We don't want to be rotating from flexion or from extension. Let's come back to neutral. Taking our hands to heart center, and then we're going to push that right leg behind us with a flexed foot. You're welcome to grab blocks here if you'd like as we move into Warrior 3, but with our hands at prayer hands. Pushing that foot towards the wall behind us. All that fluid in the ears as we come up and down out of Warrior 3 is moving around, affecting our proprioception, our balance, helping us. That standing leg has all the small muscles of the leg working in addition to the large muscles. And in yoga, we're not just working the muscles, we're working the joints and the ligaments. We can drop those hands for extra support if you'd like. And then we're going to set that right foot back down, about a 45-degree angle. We've got a good bend in our front leg. We want that, this is going to be a wide Warrior 2, or Warrior 1. We've got a pretty good width here, so we do want our hip to be open with the knee and the ankle of that rear leg. If we were in a shorter stance, we would be turning both hips forward. But this is a longer stance, Warrior 1. So we just turn the rib cage forward, followed by the shoulders, pose of strength. Now if we're pregnant, that tension created by having our hips to the side and our rib cage forward isn't great for the baby. So You can just come into lunge where you have both legs facing forward if you're pregnant today. For the rest of us, let's work with that tension. Hip to the side, rib cage towards the front, gaze straight ahead, a pose of strength, standing strong, restored, breathing. Not letting that front knee cross over the toes, but we do want to come to a 90-degree angle or less if that causes pain. Our feet are grounded into the earth, the arms are lifted towards heaven. And now keeping our legs exactly how they are, let's swoop those arms down into a humble warrior, bringing them to the sides. Arms are close to the body here. We've still got a strong leg stance here. We want this to be strengthening to our legs. Keeping that strong warrior pose, we're going to move into another version of humble warrior as we cross those arms behind us, bringing the fingertips towards the shoulders. Breathing. Staying in our warrior stance in the lower body. Good bend in that front leg. We're going to extend those arms to be straight, clasping and drawing them overhead. Still humble warrior, just some different arm variations. Releasing those hands down to the sides. We're going to take that rear foot, turning it so that all 10 toes are facing the front of the mat. Coming into pyramid, abdominals and chest resting on that front leg. Straight legs, but with a soft knee. We never want to hyperextend that knee. We can advance this by pressing the hips back, or we can modify by grabbing a few blocks. Your choice. Feeling a lengthening in the hamstrings. Release. Putting any kind of bend in the knee that we need to help keep us from having any low back pain here. It's kind of like we're standing on railroad tracks. Pretty narrow stance here. And we can step that right foot up. Inhaling up, hands meet. Coming to heart center, coming into a time for prayers of supplication, just means that we're bringing our requests to God. Praying for the people we know who are experiencing heartache, illness, grief. Maybe that's us. Maybe our heart is just hurting today. Let's pray for those requests. And we can bring our arms up center, forward fold down, stepping back with that left foot, lifting again into lunge, feeling a good stretch of that rear hip flexor, that rear heel is lifted, that front leg is at about a 90-degree angle. Breathing deeply. We never want to lose that focus on our breath when we're doing yoga. Seeing if we can deepen our breath, if we can lengthen our breath. Arms overhead as long as that's comfortable for our shoulders. Getting some work here to the mid and lower traps, not as much the high traps. Latissimus dorsi is getting a nice stretch here as we reach up. Rhomboids are working with some stabilization here. And we can draw that knee up. Balancing on our right leg this time. Let's come up to those cactus hands. Let's open and close them a little bit. Shaking out the fingers. And then we're gonna rotate towards the side of the room. Hips stay forward, belly button moves back, followed by that chest. Finding a focal point. Every exhale is an opportunity to deepen this rotation. Can we feel this not just in the torso, but in the extremities, like the edges of the fingers? Where can we notice that something is happening in this pose? Maybe in the toes as we press them into the mat, creating a good foundation here. And let's come back center. Taking our hands to heart center, flexing that left foot, pushing it behind us as we come into warrior three. Soft knee on the standing leg. Flexed foot behind us. Noticing the heat between the hands. Noticing all the places within that standing leg that the leg is working to balance us. Knowing that we're not only helping ourselves to prevent a fall, but that when we strengthen all these stabilizing muscles of the leg, we're making it less likely that we will get hurt when we do fall. Breathing. Even though we're looking down, we can still find a focal point to help us balance. And we can draw our hands to the mat for a little extra support, stepping back with that left foot, shifting into warrior one. Good bend in that front leg, opening up that back leg so that the hip is open with the knee and the ankle, because this is that longer warrior one. One of the things I like about Yoga Fit, which one of my certifications is through, is that they make it two different poses. They have a short stance warrior one and a long stance warrior one. That's really, really good to help us understand our cueing and our position. We're breathing. It's okay to cue the hips forward, but only if we're in that short stance. This is a longer stance. Let that be open, and then turn our rib cage and our shoulders. And we can move into that humble warrior, drawing our arms to the sides. Breathing. From this position, we can take a pretty good look at that front leg, making sure that we've got it in that 90-degree angle. Pressing in from all four corners of the feet. Creating that nice foundation into the ground. Arms close to the body. Let's draw up the fingertips towards the elbows. Staying in this warrior stance with the low body. Playing around a little bit with the arms. Taking those hands behind us, clasping, drawing them overhead, just to a place that doesn't cause pain. Kind of find that place where you feel a good, nice stretch. And we can release those hands down. Let's move into pyramid, taking those hands to the floor, to the calf, or to the ankle. Wherever we are, we can take them to blocks. Always an option. Pressing hips back to advance. Head should be hanging down completely relaxed. Our abdominals and our chest are resting against that front leg. Feeling a release in the hamstrings. Putting whatever bend into the knee that we need to make sure that we're not feeling pain, but we're just feeling a nice, good release here. All 10 toes facing the front of the mat, which is going to make us a little less stable, and that's good. It means we're challenging ourselves. And then we're going to walk our hands towards the long edge of the mat, coming into straddle. Wider is easier, narrow is harder. We can come down to blocks, to our hands, to the forearms, your choice. Soft knees. We want to be careful not to hyperextend the knees at all. Let's build this pose from the ground up. Let's think about our feet. Press in the big toe. Press in the pinky toe. Find some grounding in the heel. And now let's lift through the arches. We want to feel a nice stretch in the hamstrings, but that's not all that we have going on here. We want this to be just as much of a strengthening pose as a stretching pose. If we feel any pain in the low back, lift up a little bit so that we can really strengthen the legs. So let's tighten up the muscles of the legs here, lifting through the arches, up through the calves, elevating the kneecaps, feeling the quads engage, the inner thighs, kind of zipping up the legs. Many times through the day, we bend over, we grab something, and when we do this pose, what we're trying to do, since we aren't often thinking in the day when we stop and we pick something up off the floor, here we are thinking, here we are aware, and we're purposely strengthening up the muscles of the legs that we use when we bend over quickly. So let's think about this as a way to prevent injury. And we can come to a supported position here. Let's take our left hand down, centered, drawing up our right overhead, getting some rotation in our straddle. Breathing, really reaching upward. Fingers are spread nice and wide, making sure that we aren't just pressing into the base of the wrist, that we're putting some tension into the floor at each of the fingertips so that our wrist isn't carrying all that tension. Breathing. And we can reverse this, taking our right hand down, drawing the left overhead. Maybe we can feel a little stretch in the inner thigh of the right here. Good stuff. And we can take that hand down. Let's walk ourselves back to the front of the mat. Stepping up. And because our head has been below the heart in this inversion for a little while, let's just slowly roll up, vertebrae by vertebrae. Let that blood redistribute. Coming to that standing position gently. We're going to stabilize on the left foot. Let's take that right leg. Just make some semicircles. We're actually going to be doing a lot with our hips later in this session. So let's get nice and warm here. We're going to lift that right leg. Let's draw it back and forth. If you want, take your hand here at the hip flexor and just feel how that's working. The next time that we draw back, let's make sure that foot is flexed. Taking our right hand, finding the ankle. If you need to, you can use a strap here to try to bring that right in line with the hip behind us. We don't want to work that knee sideways. It has the ability to move a lot of directions, but it doesn't mean that that's good for it. Let's take our left arm overhead, reaching up, and then draw that arm forward, and then let the leg behind us just naturally come behind. As we move into dancer, finding a focal point, breathing. Our breath is really valuable in these balance poses, particularly in calming us. When we're feeling frantic, that's not a place that we can balance very easy. We want to find that place of calm. We're going to come back up to a standing position, drawing that left arm back overhead, reaching up. Let's draw that leg behind us for a little stretch of the hip flexor. We don't want to feel this in the knee. And if you're able, and this can be challenging, take your gaze up. Maybe even give yourself a slight back bend here. Breathing. And we can release this. Stepping it out, always noticing the difference between the right and the left. And let's take our left leg, make those little half moons, half circles. Stabilizing with the right. Noticing where we feel this in the hip. And then we can draw that left knee up and back. We can make that hand sandwich where we take that hand into the hip flexor. Now, how stable do we feel on the right? Right now, I don't feel stable, so I'm gonna readjust that. Maybe you need to too, because we are gonna move it to dancer. Let's take that left leg behind us, finding the ankle, using a strap if we'd like, so that we can keep an alignment of the ankle with our hip, drawing our right arm overhead, lifting up, finding our focal point, and then drawing that arm down, just allowing that left leg to travel behind us while staying in line with the hip. Breathing, balancing. If we fall out of the pose, we just get back in, no biggie. Foot is flexed of that rear foot to help to protect the tissues of the knee. And can come back to standing, keeping a bind on that back leg, extending our right arm up, giving it a little bit more of a stretch to that rear leg if we'd like. Adding a little back bend. If you'd like to challenge yourself by looking up, you can. Breathing. And we can release that. Stepping it out, inhaling up, exhaling down. Take a second here to just let the head release. The back release. And then we'll drop our knees down towards the mat. We're going to take our forearms to the mat. And then we're going to push off to dolphin. A lot like down dog, except we're at the forearms. So your head is going to be closer to the mat here. Pressing our heels towards the mat. You'll probably notice down dog is a little less challenging to draw the heels towards the mat. This, they might feel a little bit higher. We press them towards the mat still, finding our place between easy and hard. Breathing, hips elevated. We don't want to press in just at the elbow. We want that whole forearm to be creating a base here, all the way to the fingertips. And now we're going to walk those feet back, making sure our shoulders are right over the elbows for plank. We have the option here to come to a modified plank or fully extended, your choice. Fighting gravity as it tries to pull the whole body down. The core is holding us up against that gravity. And we can drop the hips, coming into Sphinx, hands underneath of the shoulders. And we want to make sure we're not hunching those shoulders into the ears at all. Fingers spread wide. We can stay right here for feeling a good abdominal stretch in Sphinx, or if you'd like to advance, we can push through the fingers, coming into Seal. Once again, making sure those shoulders aren't hunching into the ears. Breathing. Finding a good abdominal stretch here. Top of the legs towards the mat. We don't want it to be the side of the legs of the mat. We want the top of the legs into the mat here. And we can come back down. Let's bring our hands to the mat, tucking the toes, pushing into down dog. Heels towards the mat. Hips floating towards the ceiling, creating an L with the thumb and the first finger. Head hanging between the biceps. Breathing and lengthening the back. And we can come forward to that full plank, arms extended. Or again, we have that option to drop to the knees, your choice. Holding the movement, never holding the breath. Fingers spread wide. And let's drop down, belly towards the mat, hands to the sides. Let's lift into locust. Arms stay close to the body. Notice how much more the triceps engage if the arms are close to the body as opposed to out here. Palms flipped up to help open up the chest and bring our spine into more extension. If this bothers the back, you can lower the lower body and just lift with the upper body. Breathing, lifting. Remembering that we're working against gravity here, so there's going to be this natural tendency for everything to drop. So think of every exhale as an opportunity to just lift a little higher, work a little deeper into the pose. And let's shift back to child's pose. Finding neutral once more with the back. Head hanging down. We can take a standard child's pose. We can widen the knees, whatever feels really good right here and restorative. Noticing all the places that can make contact with the mat. Making this a pose we don't just feel in the back, but a pose that we feel at the forehead, at the fingertips, at the top of the ankles. Noticing everything. Taking advantage of this mind-body exercise to help fight things like dementia. And we can ease up out of this. We're gonna draw our legs in front of us. Bent legs. Palms or fingertips behind us. We're gonna cross that right leg over the left. Let's give a twist to that ankle. And then we're gonna lift into a tabletop pigeon. Easing back down. I'm not gonna stay there too long because that's a difficult pose for a lot of people. We're gonna come into this seated pigeon. So now we have the opportunity to stay here. If we wanna make this easier, we can ease down with that leg. If we wanna make it harder, we can take that foot into either the hand or the crook of the elbow, but we want to be sure that where we're feeling this is the hip. Don't want to feel it in the knee, never the knee. Breathing, releasing. Trying to sit up nice and tall. Shoulders down, away from the ears. And then we're gonna take that right foot, drawing up over the left. We're gonna swing that left leg in, coming into a seated twist. We can take our left hand around that right foot. Now push that right foot into the mat. It feels like the tailbone would be the base of this pose. In every pose, you do wanna think like, what is my base? What's my foundation? It's actually your front foot. So we can rotate behind us, taking a gaze at the back of the room, still feeling a nice stretch here. Breathing. Back arm is pretty relaxed. That front foot pressing in towards the mat. And we can come out of the rotation, coming forward. See if that bottom leg can have the knee facing straight ahead. If it can't, find where you are, go there. And we're going to see if we can even stack that top leg to be right on top. Coming into a Turkish twist, sitting nice and tall. Because our right leg is on top, we're going to take our left arm in front, slipping the right under. Eagle arms, getting a good stretch of our supraspinatus. So if this is hard, we can come to heart center. We don't want to do something that causes pain. Or if we feel like we'd like a deeper stretch, we can lift, advancing that stretch to just a place of a little more breathing. And we can release those arms, take those hands to the left. Now think about your feet being inside of like a hole in the ground and that they can't get out of that hole in the ground. We're going to take our hands to the left, pushing into that hole of the ground that they can't get out, walking the hands as those feet still turn within that hole in the ground, and then you'll find yourself on the other side. You can hug those ankles nice and close, flexing the feet out. We've got our left leg on top now, so let's take our right hand in front of us, centered with the spine, slipping the left under. If this is painful, we move to Anjali Mudra, which is just those prayer hands. If we'd like to advance, we lift. Breathing. Widening out the shoulder blades here. Can we return to that back breath if we've left it? Noticing if we've left it and returning to it, thinking about that inhale coming all across the back between the shoulder blades and then the rib cage, between the hips, and releasing that breath. Let's come into that seated forward fold by keeping our left foot where it is, bringing up that right leg, bringing up the left leg. They're all twisted up. Bring that left foot into the floor. Take our right hand here to help us into this twist a little bit. Now, even though we've got our arm here to help us with this twist, we do want to have an active core in this twist. The core should be actively twisting back, doing most of the work here. Some would say that this arm across is even a bad idea because, you want the core to be doing all of it. I think it is nice. It helps me challenge myself. And we can release that. Let's take that right foot back to the mat, crossing the left over. Let's take that foot twisting. If you go the other direction, lifting to that pigeoned bridge. Pigeon tabletop. And we can draw that back down, coming into that seated pigeon. Once again, we've got the choice to stay right here or make it easier by dropping down, or we can take that foot into the hand or to the crook of the elbow, sitting nice and tall, feeling this in the hip, never in the knee, flexing that foot to take care of the tissues underneath of the knee, breathing. It can be hard not to slump in this pose, so be very conscious of that and just keep trying to sit up straight here. And we can release that leg. Let's open up to a butterfly, cobbler, making sure we're sitting to the front of the tailbone. Purposely drawing those knees down, making sure our shoulders aren't up by the ears. And we can fold down, hinging. Feeling a nice release in the inner thigh. And we can ease up. Let's open up those legs nice and wide. If you'd like, you can grab a block as we move into seated straddle. Once again, sitting to that tailbone. Easing down, not letting our back flex at all, finding our place between easy and hard. It may change from day to day, right? It might even change on the same day. You might
Find that as you're in this pose, we started one place, but then on an exhale, you might be able to release even deeper into the pose.
But always just finding that place of release, never that place of pain. We want flexed feet. And we can release. Let's move into legs at the wall. It's time for some restorative yoga. If you've got a wall nearby, you can just come onto your back, kicking your legs up the wall. If you don't have a wall, a yoga strap is a great option. We can wrap it around us, bringing the strap right underneath of the arms. You do want it to be nice and tight into a circle. Then we're going to take one foot and find that place where you would be able to be supported with that foot. You still got this nice and high. Then we ease back, popping in the other foot, and then just releasing those hands down. We're no longer thinking about how far we can stretch and how far we can reach. Everything changes here in restorative yoga, where we're thinking about letting go and releasing, noticing what we're feeling and where. The more we let go in a restorative pose, the more beneficial that it is going to be to us. Legs up the wall is a pose that's good to do about 10 minutes a day if you're able. We're not going to be in it that long today, but I do want to keep us in it long enough to think again about this restoration of the soul. While we can certainly think of restoration as what we need from a difficult time and a snapshot of life, in a broader sense, salvation itself is the ultimate form of restoration. Salvation is not assistance, it's a rescue. It's restoration from death to life. A friend and I have been looking through or reading through a book called Deeper by a man called Dane Ortlund. And what I read this week I thought would be really great to share in this session about restoration. Ortlund says this. He says, God defies what we instinctively feel by embracing us in the middle of our mess. We don't have to go through security to get to Jesus. We don't have to get in line or take a ticket. No waving for his attention. No raising our voice to make sure that he hears us. In our smallness, he notices us. In our sinfulness, he draws near to us. In our anguish, he's in solidarity with us. What we must see is that Jesus is positively drawn to us when we are most sure that he wouldn't want to be. Around Jesus, sinners who know themselves to be sinners feel safe. They find themselves both known to be guilty and embraced in love rather than one or the other. Our felt shame is what draws Jesus in. He is the mighty friend of sinners. And what other kind of Savior would do? Who of us could really get fresh traction in our lives if we were following a Savior who kept at a safe distance, who treated us not as friends, but as employees? But if this Savior who draws near to us, who is never repelled by our acknowledged shame and weakness, there's just no limit to how deep a transformation is possible in us. No limit to the work of Jesus to restore us. Can take another breath or two here. Then we're going to slip one leg out, the other leg out. Take that out from being across the body. Set that strap aside, or if you're at the wall, just ease yourself to the side. Let's come onto our back. Rolling, rocking back and forth a little bit here. And then we'll extend our left leg. Bring our right leg back to the mat. Let's take that left leg over towards the right, coming into a twist. Then we're going to take our shoulders, straightening them out towards the mat, extending our arm out, taking our gaze towards that left hand, and breathing. Every exhale, see if a little bit more of those shoulders can hit the floor. Working with gravity here. in the supine rotation. And now we can take that left knee towards the chest, allowing the right to follow, finding neutral again after that rotation, taking our right leg up, extending the left leg towards the mat, and then rotating that right leg towards the left, opening up the arms, bringing those shoulders towards the mat, taking our gaze towards that right hand. Every exhale is an opportunity to release deeper into this rotation, to maybe straighten the shoulders a little bit more towards the floor. Breathing and releasing. And we can use our hands to assist as we bring that right foot back towards the chest, followed by the left, rocking that out. Then finding a comfortable position for our final relaxation. You might want to pop a pillow under the knees if we've got any lower back issues that we're taking care of today. Taking our hands to the sides, let's take one last purposeful breath, inhaling deeply, exhaling fully, and then just allow our breath to become easy, natural, nothing forced. Softening the shoulders. Maybe thinking of that verse where Jesus says, "Come to me, all ye who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest." What is it that you're carrying that you just need him to carry for you? Imagine that coming off of your shoulders. We're softening the neck. Softening the lips, allowing the teeth to feel loose. Finding relaxation in the cheekbones, the space under the eyes. Letting the eyelids fully rest on the eyes, softening the areas where we smile, those crinkles we get. Softening the space between the eyebrows, the right temple, the left temple. Finding softness in the forehead, every follicle of hair resting. Allowing the arms to feel heavy, the right arm, the left arm, both forearms, the right hand, the left hand, releasing any extra tension out those hands. Taking our attention to the heart, noticing that strong rib cage that God created to protect the heart. Pausing to allow our heart to feel open. Is there anything we're holding in our heart that we don't want to carry anymore? Any bitterness, anger, unkindness? Choose to release that. Allowing the hips to feel heavy. Noticing the top of the right leg, the top of the left leg, the back of both legs, the left knee, the right knee, both of the shins, the right calf, the left calf. Allowing a softness to circle the ankles, noticing the tops of the feet, the bottom of the right foot and the bottom of the left. Maybe imagining yourself in that green pasture or beside the still water. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Allowing contentment to wash over us. And gratitude that we serve a God who restores us. And we can wiggle our fingers and toes. Maybe draw those arms overhead when we're going to wake up in the morning. Drawing a knee in towards the chest, followed by the other, rocking up.